From unemployed waitress to community hero in 24 hours. A 30-second act of kindness that changed everything.
The coffee mug shattered against the floor, sending ceramic fragments dancing across the greasy tiles. I didn't move. I couldn't. Standing there in my stained uniform, watching steam rise from the spilled coffee, I knew my life was about to change forever. What I didn't know was that in 12 hours, 300 Marines would be standing outside that very door. Not for breakfast, but for me. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I've spent the last 4 years serving coffee and dreams to anyone willing to pay $3 for both. At 28, I'd perfected the art of being invisible in Millbrook, Ohio, a town where the steel mill had closed and hope seemed to rust along with everything else. Most people saw me as just another waitress with tired eyes and worn-out sneakers. They were wrong. I lived in a cramped studio above Martinez Auto Repair, sharing my space with a 3-legged rescue dog named Buddy and a shoebox full of my father's Navy medals hidden under my bed. Dad never came home from Afghanistan. Mom never recovered from losing him. I learned early that grief has its own geography, and sometimes the only way through is to keep moving, keep serving, keep believing that small acts of kindness might add up to something bigger than the sum of their parts. The rent was always due. Buddy always needed food. The world kept spinning with its usual indifference. But every morning, I tied my apron strings tight and walked into Murphy's Diner with my father's voice echoing in my head. Courage isn't about being fearless, kiddo. It's about doing what's right when fear is all you feel. That Tuesday started like any other. Rain hammered the windows while the usual suspects nursed their coffee and complained about everything from the weather to the government. I was wiping down tables when the door chimed and everything changed. He stood there dripping, his marine dress blues soaked through but still somehow dignified. The uniform was old, maybe from the 80s, but the man wearing it held himself like he'd earned every thread. His left hand trembled, not from cold, but from something deeper. His right hand clutched a small paper bag against his chest, like it contained the last piece of his soul. The diner went quiet. Not the comfortable quiet of morning routine, but the uncomfortable silence of people trying to decide whether to look or look away. Most chose away. He didn't ask for much, just hot coffee and maybe some bread if we had any going to waste. His voice cracked when he spoke, not from weakness, but from the weight of having to ask it all. I looked at him and saw my father. I saw every veteran who'd ever come home to find that home had forgotten how to welcome them back. The kitchen had just sent back an order. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans. Still hot, still perfect. I loaded it onto a tray with fresh coffee and walked it over to his corner booth like it was the most natural thing in the world. This was returned, I told him. Kitchen's policy. Can't let good food go to waste. He stared at the plate like it might disappear if he blinked. I can't pay for this. It's already paid for, I said. Coffee's on the house. What happened next changed everything. Not just for me, but for everyone watching. Because sometimes courage isn't about grand gestures or dramatic speeches. Sometimes it's about treating someone with dignity when the world has decided they don't deserve any. But here's where the story gets complicated. The veteran's name was Marcus Rodriguez. He'd served 3 tours in Iraq, lost his best friend to an IED, and came home to find that his wife had moved on and his job had vanished. The PTSD hit him like shrapnel, invisible but devastating. He'd been living in his car for 6 months, trying to stay invisible, trying not to be a burden on anyone. As he ate, he told me about his daughter. 8 years old, living with her mother in California. He hadn't seen her in 2 years because he was too ashamed of what he'd become. The paper bag he carried? Birthday cards he'd been writing to her every month but never sent because he had no address to put on them. You remind me of her mother, he whispered. She used to say everyone deserves a chance to feel human. I felt something crack open in my chest. Not breaking, opening, like a door I'd kept locked finally finding its key. That's when Tom Murphy, the owner, stormed out of the kitchen. His face was red, his voice loud enough to make the coffee cups rattle. What the hell do you think you're doing? He shouted. This ain't a charity. You want to feed every bum in town? Do it on your own dime. The other customers pretended to study their phones. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody defended the man who'd served their country or the waitress who'd served them coffee every morning for 4 years. "He's a veteran," I said quietly. "He asked for coffee and bread. I gave him food that was going in the trash." "I don't care if he's George Washington," Murphy screamed. "You don't make those decisions. You're fired. Get out." I untied my apron with hands that barely shook. Marcus tried to stand, tried to apologize, but I shook my head. "You have nothing to be sorry for," I told him. As I walked toward the door, he pressed something into my hand. His dog tags. "My daughter's name is Isabella," he whispered. "If something happens to me, I want someone to know she had a father who tried." I walked out into the rain with no job, $43 in my bank account, and the weight of those dog tags burning against my palm. But something had shifted inside me. For the first time in years, I felt like I'd done something that mattered. What I didn't know was that a teenage girl at the counter had filmed the whole thing. What I didn't know was that Marcus Rodriguez had a son who'd been looking for his father for months, a son who wore his own uniform now. Marine Captain David Rodriguez, stationed at Camp Pendleton. The video went viral overnight, but not in the way you might expect. The comments were brutal. "Rules are rules. She should have asked permission first. Bleeding hearts like this are what's wrong with America." I couldn't find work anywhere in town. Word traveled fast in a place like Millbrook. "She's trouble," they said. "She doesn't follow rules." One manager looked at me sadly and said, "I'm sorry, honey. We can't risk the bad publicity." By the end of the week, I was down to my last $20. Buddy needed food. Rent was due. I walked downtown in the rain, wondering how everything had gone so wrong, when I saw him again. Marcus, sleeping under the bridge, using his marine jacket as a blanket. I knelt beside him and left half my sandwich wrapped in paper. "Thank you for your service," I whispered. "Thank you for reminding me what courage looks like." I walked home not knowing that a black SUV had been following me. Not knowing that inside sat a Marine captain who'd been searching for his father for 2 years. Not knowing that tomorrow morning would bring a miracle dressed in military precision. The sun broke through the clouds at exactly 0700 hours. The rain had stopped, leaving Millbrook's streets clean and gleaming. Most of the town was still asleep when the convoy arrived. 12 black vehicles moving in perfect formation down Main Street. They parked in front of Murphy's Diner. The first man out wore marine dress blues with captain's bars gleaming on his collar. Behind him came another Marine, then another, then another. They kept coming. Marines, Army soldiers, Navy personnel, Air Force officers, 300 of them in perfect formation, lining both sides of the street. Captain David Rodriguez stood at their head, his jaw set, his eyes fixed on the diner's front door. In his hand, he carried a folded American flag and a small wooden box. Tom Murphy opened his diner to find 300 service members standing at attention outside his door. When Captain Rodriguez walked in, the few early customers fell silent. "I'm looking for the waitress who served my father," Rodriguez said, his voice carrying the authority of command. "The veteran you humiliated yesterday. That was Marine Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez, holder of the Purple Heart, Bronze Star, and Navy Cross. The man you called a bum is my father." Murphy's face went white. "I didn't know. My father disappeared 2 years ago when his PTSD became too much to bear," Rodriguez continued. "We've been searching for him ever since. Yesterday, for the first time in months, someone treated him like a human being. That person was your employee, the one you fired for showing compassion." The silence stretched like a held breath. "Bring her here," Rodriguez commanded. Someone had already found me, had pounded on my door and told me I was needed at the diner. I walked down Main Street in yesterday's clothes, Buddy limping beside me, not understanding what was happening until I saw them. 300 service members standing in formation. When they saw me coming, every single one raised their right hand to their forehead. The salute echoed down the street like thunder. I stopped walking. I couldn't breathe. Captain Rodriguez approached me, holding out the wooden box. "This was my father's," he said. "He wants you to have it." Inside the box were his medals, the Purple Heart, The Bronze Star, the Navy Cross, 3 tours of duty distilled into metal and ribbon. "I can't," I whispered. "These belong to him." "He says they belong to someone who understands what they really mean," Rodriguez replied. "Someone who knows that honor isn't about the uniform you wear. It's about the choices you make when no one's watching." The story spread like wildfire, but this time the narrative was different. Murphy's diner closed within a week. Suppliers canceled contracts. Staff quit. The community that had once ignored a homeless veteran suddenly couldn't distance themselves fast enough from the man who'd humiliated him. But I didn't celebrate. I didn't post on social media or give interviews. I simply did what I'd always done. I kept serving. A veterans organization offered me a job managing their new community kitchen. The Marines I'd met that day came back to volunteer. Marcus got the help he needed: housing, healthcare, and most importantly, a reunion with his daughter Isabella, who flew in from California the moment she heard her father was alive. Today, the Millbrook Community Kitchen serves 300 meals a day. Buddy greets every guest at the door, his tail wagging despite his missing leg. On my desk sits a small frame containing Marcus's dog tags and a photo of him with Isabella. The first picture they'd taken together in 3 years. The medals stay locked in my apartment. Sometimes, late at night, I take them out and remember my father's words about courage, about doing what's right when fear is all you feel, about how honor isn't something you wear, it's something you live. This story isn't really about a waitress or a veteran or even a viral video. It's about the moments when we choose to see each other as human beings deserving of dignity and respect. It's about understanding that everyone fighting a battle we know nothing about, and sometimes the smallest gesture of kindness can mean the difference between hope and despair. In a world that moves too fast and forgets too easily, we need more people willing to stand up when it's hard. We need more people willing to see the person behind the pain. We need more people who understand that courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's as quiet as a warm meal shared with a stranger. Marcus Rodriguez now volunteers at the community kitchen every Tuesday. He helps other veterans find housing, healthcare, and hope. His daughter visits every month, and they're building something new together, not erasing the past, but learning to carry it with dignity. Tom Murphy sold his property and left town. The diner sits empty, a for lease sign gathering dust in its window. Sometimes I drive by and remember that Tuesday afternoon when everything changed. When I learned that doing the right thing doesn't always feel good in the moment, but it's the only thing that lets you sleep at night. Captain Rodriguez was transferred to a base in Virginia, but he still calls every month to check on his father and to thank me for giving him back his family. "You didn't just save his life," he told me once. "You saved his soul, and mine too." I keep those words close to my heart, along with the dog tags and the memory of 300 Marines standing in the rain to honor a simple act of kindness. Because in a world that often feels broken, it's good to remember that honor still exists. Courage still matters. And sometimes the smallest light can push back the deepest darkness. The rain still comes to Millbrook. The mill is still closed. The paint still peels from the storefronts. But something has changed here. Something you can't see but everyone can feel. It's the understanding that we're all in this together, that everyone deserves dignity, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply treat another human being like they matter. Because they do. We all do. And that's a truth worth serving. One cup of coffee, one warm meal, one act of courage at a time.